ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all very much for coming. My name's Hannah Kay, and I'm the executive producer at Intelligence Squared. Now I'm going to introduce our chair. She's a TV broadcaster and currently presenter and executive producer at CNBC. So please, would you give a very warm welcome to Tania Bryer. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And ladies and a couple of gentlemen, just before we start, gentlemen, put your hands up. How many are there of you? Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, we're thrilled to have you. And you can't be passive. We want to hear from you later on, don't we, ladies? So welcome to our discussion. It's the pinkification of young girls. With feminism being so prevalent in our society today, with all women achieving so much their goals of independence, what about young girls? Is it wrong to put them into the image that we all feel they have to be? Are we as responsible parents giving them the wrong impressions, the wrong role models? Should our young girls have role models like Marie Curie, Amelia Earhart, or the Barbies that they see in a lot of the shops today? We're going to be discussing this theme, and most importantly, what does the pinkification of young girls do to their self-esteem and to their self-image? And as responsible parents, what do we do about it? Where are we in today's society? With me, I'm thrilled and privileged to have 4 fabulous women. I'm just going to introduce them to you very quickly by name. We have Alannah Weston, we have Tiffany Dark, we have another Tanya, but it's Tanya Gold, and we have Katie Hopkins. But first, I'm going to put my attention to Katie Hopkins, who's right next to me. Now, Katie, our first speaker, you're a journalist, a broadcaster, and a businesswoman. You've got a weekly column in The Sun and a parenting column with Yahoo. Ladies and gentlemen, before she speaks, could you please welcome her? Now, Katie, it was very interesting because last weekend at the Hay on Wye Festival, the author Ian McEwan said, and I quote, that wanting to know the sex of an unborn baby and confer a pink or blue fate on them is a form of moral kitsch. He said that parents should instead be celebrating the person. Katie, what do you think about that?
I think that's a load of tosh. There's something about parenting that brings out the very worst in individuals, because suddenly you become a mother and you take the moral high ground. And Ian has done a very nice job as a grandfather, potential future grandfather, of taking the moral high ground himself. And I think he's completely wrong on this. It's not moral kitsch to decide or ask what your baby is going to be. It's not a person that you're carrying around on you. And I'm not pregnant, despite this frock of mine. It's actually a baby, and you do want to know the gender of that baby so you can start to understand the little individual that's going to come out of you. It's surprising enough that a watermelon is going to pass out of something the size of a polo mint, without the additional surprise of not knowing whether that's going to be a boy or a girl. And I have 2 girls, 9 and 8. One of them is called India, as many of you will know. When I was going to have a girl, I did paint the nursery pink. And I had no problem with that. And I did have pink sheets on their cots for both of the girls. But interestingly for me, those girls are completely different individuals. One of them now will only wear boys' clothes. And one of them loves Barbie, she loves princesses, and she won't move anywhere without a pair of pink pants. Now, either I did something very different along the way between those 9 and 8, so very close in ages, or it's just that you determine the way that you want to be. And I don't think giving a colour to your child when they're born, or knowing that they're going to be a boy or a girl, really changes what they become when they're going through to their teenage years.
Katie, thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Tanya Gold. So Tanya's a columnist and feature writer for The Guardian, The Sunday Times, also restaurant critic for The Spectator. What a wonderful job to have. She frequently argues in defense of feminism. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tanya Gold. Now, Tanya, you've recently written that Disney Princess, the Disney Princess franchise is dangerous to young girls. It's so popular. This is what we've all grown up with. Why do you feel that way?
Well, I was interested in your introduction that you mentioned Barbie. I wrote an article for the Sunday Times about Barbie last weekend, and I did some research in which I found out that Barbie has not only been a CEO of her own business, but she's also been a surgeon, a pilot, a paleontologist, and, well, for all I know, she has a PhD. So I find it very, very difficult to hold Barbie in any true contempt, because at the end of the day, she's a working woman. And second wave feminist to my core, that's really all I care about. The Disney princesses, however, are something else entirely. They are a great evil in the world. This is because if you are going to, I don't have a girl, I have a 9-month-old boy, but if he was, I would certainly not encourage him to want to be a princess when he grows up. Not only because he can never be a princess, since of course that kind of power is concentrated in the hands of a very, very few families, mostly in Europe, some of whom have quite serious health issues, I would imagine, these days. But also because I don't want him to dream of being Princess Barbie. I want him to dream of President Barbie, being President Barbie. Princess Disney. I mean President Disney, because we live in 2013. I don't think that we should be throwing our lot in with the kings and princesses of another age. It offends my social democratic heart.
Well, Tanya, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll come back to that discussion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Tiffany Dark. Tiffany is the editor of the Sunday Times Style magazine, which tells us everything we need to know about fashion, lifestyle, and food. Tiffany, welcome to our panel tonight. Do you think there really is a problem with pink? And if so, what is it?
Well, I don't think it's pink itself. I mean, pink, as you can tell, is quite a colour that I'm into, but I think it's what we confer onto pink. You know, what does pink represent to us? It's really the sort of symbolism that we as a society have laid onto it. We think it's all about kind of sugar and glitter and subservience and all those kind of things. But if you look at the historical evidence of pink, there weren't those kind of gender attributes assigned to pink or blue back in the day. And in fact, in Victorian times, children were just dressed in whites, and gradually they were dressed in pastels. And in fact, originally, it was considered that blue was a colour for girls, baby girls, and pink was considered a good colour for baby boys. And the reason for this was that pink was considered to be a strong colour, and blue was considered to be a dainty colour. And they also felt that blue went quite nicely with blonde, and pink went quite nicely with brunette. So really, it's not about the colours themselves, it's about what we as a society, the symbolism that we put onto those colours. So if you now go back to like a little 3-year-old girl choosing dresses, do you really think that she's in possession of all of that knowledge? I would suggest that little girls between the ages of 3 and 7, when they're really forming their own identity, they should be allowed the freedom of choice to choose what they want rather than what we as parents or as society have put on them. And I think really it's up to parents to allow them to have that freedom of choice. You know, my little girl, I've got a 5-year-old, is absolutely mad for dresses. And she was quite mad for pink, but I have managed to steer her towards purple and occasionally yellow, but you won't catch her in blue. But the thing is, for me, it's just really important that she is allowed to have her own freedom of choice and express and explore her own identity.
Tiffany, thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Alannah Weston. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll be hearing from Alannah. Alannah is the Deputy Chairman of the Selfridges Group. Previously, she was Selfridges Creative Director, where she spearheaded a variety of store-wide campaigns, including Project Ocean, No Noise, and The Beauty Project. Please welcome Alannah Weston. Now, Alannah, some people, and I think definitely Tanya here, blame Disney franchise for the so-called pink princess problem. What do you think?
Well, I think giving any corporation that much power or that much responsibility is probably not that healthy. But on the other hand, I should say I do hate pink, and I do hate everything to do with the princess kind of world. But I think what we have to do is look back at the more complex kind of roots that it's taken hold in our society. And I mean, I think it's, the princess is an archetype. It is something you see, whether it's in Greek myths or Grimm's fairy tales, and it comes all the way through literature. But what the Disney company has done is to take that archetype and transform it into a stereotype, which now has narrowed ideas of what girls can be, what their potential might be, and how they might look. And this, I really do think, is very dangerous. I have 2 girls who are 4 and 6, and my husband says that pink is what causes all the trouble in our house. So last time, I think it was the Hello Kitty lip gloss that had to be put on the top of the refrigerator because of the war going on over it. So there is something to do with pink that gets little girls really going. And when you have a child, and I was a tomboy, and in fact, my mother, I was such a tomboy that to convince me to go to church wearing a dress, she had to put the dress on my brother. And then say to me, well, he's a boy, and he's wearing a dress, so, what's your problem? And at age 5, I really couldn't argue with her. So when I produced these children who suddenly said that they only wanted everything pink and that they wanted to be princesses when they grew up and this kind of thing, I was horrified and put it down to something to do with foraging for berries in our deep kind of, psyche. But anyway, I hate pink. I'm not for it. But as a retailer, I think my job is to offer people as much choice and breadth of choice as possible, which is what Disney doesn't do.
Alannah, thank you very much. Now, talking about choices, ladies and gentlemen, I'd now like to open the discussion up to you and some questions for our esteemed panelists here, and anything that they've said that either horrifies you or that you agree with, or what your feelings are. So who would like to start off? We do have a microphone, and I'm going to ask you to stand up, but don't be nervous. You're in safe hands, and we're all good friends here. Yes! How wonderful. A man is going to start it.
Is anybody aware of any data about connections between pinkification and cultures where it sort of seems to be rife, and the achievements of women in those societies? I thought it might be helpful to kind of make it a little bit data driven. Thank you.
Well, as far as I'm aware, there's absolutely no proven scientific link between pinkification and the ways in which gender stereotyping kicks in later on. Whatsoever. And make of that what you will. The truth is, I don't know. Catherine Bennett wrote in The Observer that there's been, quite recently I believe, that there's been, I think it's the research that's not been done. It must be, because it's really quite new, isn't it, all this pinkification?
Where I think it would be interesting to look at is in Sweden, where they have these gender-free nurseries. Yes. So basically they bring up children to be totally unaware of the fact of whether they're boys or girls. They don't refer to them as he or she. They have a kind of gender unspecific pronoun, hen, which basically it means friend, I think, and they refer to each other like that. And that, I think, has kicked off in the last 10 years or so. And I'd be really interested to see if graduates from that particular nursery or that particular school of thought had any specific differences from the ones that had come before. But my experience as a parent is that children grow out of this anyway. So I think, any kind of craze that a child has for pink or for being particularly girly or for diving down these roads, they will grow out of at some point if they want to, or if it is part of their personality, they will adhere to. But no, in terms of actual data, I don't think there is anything out there to prove it. No. What's your experience?
I kind of worry that it's not just what she sees on TV, watching Disney programs, but also sort of strengthened by her kind of what she sees in her friends, and they're all into that, and that's what worries me.
Is there? So I've got two questions for you, actually. So you might want to sit here. I don't know, but one thing is about does it really matter that she dresses as a princess? Who cares? She probably looks fab. She probably has a great time. Okay, you really care. The second thing is maybe we could come there. But the second thing is there another weird thing about? I mean, do you do school drop off yet at 4?
Yes,
Giles.
I do, and I see play dates, and so.
Do you not find that strange?
I don't know whether it matters. Maybe she'll grow out of it. Maybe it doesn't matter.
How many other dads are with you when you do school drop off?
I see 2 or 3.
Yeah, and for me, that's a much bigger thing than the pinkification of girls and whether they've got a dress on or not. You're still the curious case of the dad in the playground, from where I come from. And that's something I really notice, is there's one lone dad. I think that's much more going to influence how children think about their role when they grow up than whether they've got pink pants on. But obviously there's people that disagree.
Yes, before we go to them, Katie, Giles, why does it bother you so much? What are you worried about?
Well, it doesn't bother me, but I'm worried if she were to just kind of stay in this kind of focus on what she looks like, and that really matters. I mean, I'm concerned that if she's, too focused on her looks, then, that's going to affect who she becomes, and, that concerns me.
Giles, thank you very much for your questions. Now, before we go on, I know there's a lady here that disagrees, but I'd like to bring in Sarah. Where is Sarah? Because Tiffany was talking about Sweden. There she is. And you can tell us about the schools where they're not allowed to really make an impact of which gender. And
you just summarized it. I think, there's a huge debate in Sweden right now whether you're doing children a huge disservice by kind of informing them too much about what a boy should look like or what a girl should look like. And it's more considered a more relaxed, open-minded way to just to not put them in these different colors. I mean, I think you kind of said it all in a sense, and there's also a pronoun to not say he or she. So I think it's even the haircuts you have or the names you give your children are now.
So they can't actually say he or she. They can't address them as he or she.
No, you use it's not friend, but it's a pronoun that is just means he or she basically.
And how is that affecting them, Sarah? What are the results?
You know what I think one of the biggest... Sorry, this is making a funny noise here, but I think the biggest effect, yes, that's a very interesting example, but if you use Sweden as an example for a gender, it's not a perfect country in any way in terms of the equality between the genders, but one thing that I would like to highlight about the Swedish example is we're talking about narratives and we're talking about Disney narratives, etc., but we have every single child that grows up in Sweden, boy or girl, will read Pippi Longstocking and all the other sort of stories written by Astrid Lindgren. And they're filled with strong boys, strong girls, working together, playing together, being out on adventures together. And I genuinely think that has a huge effect upon how they see not only themselves and their gender, but the opposite gender as well. So I would be really interested to hear from the audience what you think about these narratives that we tell our children. And I know there was a Richard Dawkins article this morning that somehow touched upon that. But fairy tales, that's for kids.
Sarah, absolutely. Before we reach Richard Dawkins' fairy tales and saying that we shouldn't have them and that they're dangerous, I would like to ask Tanya here, how do you feel? I mean, in Sweden, in the schools, they're not allowed to address them as he or she.
I think it's absurd.
I thought you would.
There are gender differences between men and women, and I find that fine. Sorry, is this working? Yeah. And I think that's fine in almost all regards. What I don't find it fine is that women, according to the Fawcett Society, will earn possibly £330,000 less in their lifetimes than... Is this working?
Yes.
I always feel like I have a microphone. £330,000 less in their lifetime than men. Women have smaller pensions. They're poorer because they work less. And as I'm sure you all know, certainly within the elite, the drop-off starts during the childbearing age. And so I certainly agree with Katie that seeing more men looking after children. I mean, the rates of shared parental leave, which the coalition government has introduced, are so low. Almost no men are taking up the shared parental leave. And I mean, I would be much more worried about who's going to look after my children than I'm working than what colour my daughter's skirt is. I have to say I find all this pink stuff a lot more, I think it's more irritating than dangerous. I think we have much more. Oh, and also I was going to say, as you know, in the cabinet we've got something like 17% of the cabinet are female, 25% of parliament. It's even worse in the judiciary.
But Tanya, can I just say, I mean, I think you may be right about pink, but the princess narrative has got to be pretty dangerous. I mean, this, you know, my daughter's favorite princess is Ariel, the Little Mermaid. Now,
You're saying it in a really sinister way.
She doesn't. It is sinister.
Ariel.
It is sinister. We bought the book, and in the Ladybird edition, she's told that in order not to have a tail and walk on land, she will walk with extreme pain. Okay, this is to get the guy, right? Extreme pain. And then she mustn't speak. She will be silenced. So you've got necrophilia in Snow White. You've got a foot fetish going on in Cinderella. You've got Sleeping Beauty who's asleep until she gets awakened. I mean, these stories,
hang on, Katie,
there's something wrong with these stories.
Hang on.
What about your footwear? Is it comfy? Are those
Do you know?
Are those comfy shoes? Right on your
Shall
right there.
I know people in fashion always say this, but anyone who knows me knows that I can't stand to wear high heels. And this pair is a pair I've had for about 10 years, and it's the only pair that I can go out in, and so everybody calls them my going out shoes.
But there'll be many
So they
people,
are comfortable.
There'll be many people here, maybe many people walking around this store limping in extreme, exquisite agony, but they look good.
But yes, but Katie, are they doing it to get the man or just to make themselves feel good? And I think that's probably more Alannah's point.
Well, yeah.
You know, what is the pressure that the young girls feel?
But I mean, certainly if you look back in the history of all fairy tales, mostly the men are the really strong characters and they're the heroes and the protagonists of the story, and the girls are there simply to find somebody to marry because that is the fate that awaits them. Now, not wishing to disagree with you, Tanya, about Disney at all, but at least we have had little strides in Disney, and excuse me if you don't have children because you will not be aware of the detail here, but Brave and Frozen, the latest two films from the Disney franchise, are actually less dangerous than previous ones because, for a start, the protagonists are actually female. So in Brave, the princess, who is the big heroine of the story, is allowed to be a hunter, and she's allowed to go off and gallop through forests and have an active lifestyle. And actually, she doesn't want to get married. However, the whole film is all about marriage. And Frozen, which is the latest one, which seems to have kind of swept through the nation's girlhood and obsessed every single one of them along the way, is also about two female protagonists, two sisters. And again, unfortunately, the whole film is about marriage, but at least you have two strong women there, one who is a ruler, one who is a younger sister, and there are other themes that are going on there. All three of them don't wear pink.
Okay, do you know what a fourth wave feminist would say to you? She would say to you that is feminism for the elite. Where's your intersectionality? Where are your women of colour? I must be missing something. But it's better, but it's not good enough. Yes, and where are your people of and where are your transsexuals?
Where are the lesbians?
You know, it's all very well to have feminism for wealthy white women who are the daughters of kings. What about the rest of us? That's what a fourth wave feminist would say.
Who are your role models? Who would you like role models to be for your young son?
It's very, very hackneyed, but since I had a son, I read If by Rudyard Kipling and cry.
Now, what happens? Tanya, just tell me, what happens when, how old is your son now?
He's 9 months. He's very...
Oh, gosh. Bless him. Poor boy. Okay, so what happens when he's about 8, 9 years old, and let's say he wants to dress up in a Disney costume or in something quite feminine? How would you feel? What would you say to him?
I was hoping he'd be gay, to be honest, because I'm Jewish and I want a son who'll never leave. I mean, didn't it once say on Mumsnet, top tips on Mumsnet, and one of them is, you know, never interfere with a toddler's choice of bedwear. I don't really care. He's got an, I don't mean to sidetrack the discussion, he's got this is what a feminist looks like t-shirt. But I couldn't care less less what he wears. I mean, I see the girls, the Disney princess girls around the playground with my nephew stamping on people's heads. You know, I think that's much worse.
Now, I'd like to, yes, young lady in the yellow, if you could stand up, tell us your name.
I'm Rosa. I'm a student, and I also work at Selfridges, so so I wanted to come here. I suppose one thing that I think that there's a huge problem in this country, all around the world, with sexism today. You only need to look at projects like Everyday Sexism and Laura Bates to know that it's an issue, and I think that our responsibility starts when children are born, essentially. And I suppose I have quite a big interest in retail. And I think that we're talking a lot about the colour and the clothing, but actually it's also about the products. And I think, I mean, I don't know, there was an article in The Independent a couple of weeks ago. Boots got into a lot of trouble because they were selling these baby reins, and there was blue for boys and there was pink for girls. And on the boys' one it says train driver, and on the girls' ones it says cupcake. And it's saying, oh, when I grow up I want to be like a cupcake. I don't know. So I suppose my question is mainly for you, Alannah, and do you think there's more that retailers should be doing and could be doing? Because you said that it wasn't all up to one corporation's responsibility, but what do you think we can do for public image in that sense?
Listen, I think there's always more retailers can do. There's always more they can get better at, and they need to. And I think, you know, over the last few days, I've been thinking a lot about choice, and the easy answer is, we offer people a choice. Well, you know, in Selfridges, we don't offer people the choice of buying endangered fish. So we've decided that that's a stance that we're going to take. And, you know, who knows what might come out of this conversation if we all stay friends. But quite seriously, I do think that some of the things that we've chosen to sell in Selfridges are really interesting. I brought along this Makey doll. Okay, so this we have exclusively. You can't buy it anywhere else. And my daughter designed this herself. So you go on a computer and you choose the hair, and you choose the eyes, and you choose the clothes and everything. And this is what she chose. And it's the only doll up there that is blue and has, you know, movable joints and could possibly stand up and is wearing glasses. So, you know, I think by offering those kind of things, retailers have the power to give people a breath. Do I think we're doing it well enough? Probably not. We've only had our toy department for the last 2 Christmases, so it's pretty new for us. But following on from what we've done in the Beauty Project, where we're trying to celebrate all definitions of beauty and widen that definition as much as possible through the campaign, I think it will have a lasting effect on the people that work here, and I think our customers will also start to think twice. So yes, I do think retailers need to take a stand, and they need to listen to their customers, and they need to give the widest choice possible.
But do you think, though, Alannah, it's interesting because you're giving the people the choices, but what about the role of parents here, whether it's a father or a mother, whoever's parenting the child, to come in and choose the various products? There's so much choice out there. So what's the responsibility of the parent to actually give their child the tools to understand what's out there? Katie?
I mean, for me, I suppose one of the really important things as a working mum is to show my daughters that the possibilities to be a working mum are endless and enormous, and they mustn't be restricted by this idea that, because the most mums they see are mums doing the school drop-off, and they know that those mums then go to coffee morning, spend the afternoon reading Mumsnet, and then do pickup. It's really important for me, never go on Mumsnet. I don't know if any of you do. Please, if you do one thing for me, and I know you won't want to because most of you loathe me with a passion I can only dream of, but never, ever go on Mumsnet. I went there once. Their top tip was interesting things for a packed lunchbox. That is not what women need to be reading in this day and age. Lecture over. I would like to say, though, that I want to show my daughters that my choices might be wrong. When they Google me later on in life, when they're allowed on the internet, they will realise many of my choices will be wrong because they will see them in picture format. I don't want to say that I'm a good example to them, but I am an example of a woman that works away from home in the week, turns up at the weekend, and people always say to me, you know, how can you work away from home? How can you be away in the week from your children? I have 3 children. Not that that matters either. Quantity is no measure of value, I suppose. But people say that, don't they? I have 3 children. Aha, I'm more superior than you. Sod it, I have 4. No, I have 6. Christ, are you bloody Irish? I don't know. But anyway, quantity is not a measure of value. This is an important point. It's not about pink, but and people say, how can you work away from home? Your children, they will be cast aside in their bedrooms weeping. And I say, I just work like a husband. And that shuts it down straight away, work like a husband. And then I kind of, give it the swivel and off I walk. It's a powerful thing. But that's what I want to show my girls, and that's kind of how I want them to see, and that's how I want to teach them, is there's many roles, stay at home dad, whatever, but you choose according to what you feel suits you best.
Tanya, do you think, as what Katie's talking about, do you think women can sometimes be the worst critics of other women and put them down and label them?
Yeah. In fact, I've got a flashy line about it, that women are always collaborators in their own degradation. That's my flashy line. Yes, I do. I mean, I think the idea that if you're a woman, you're a feminist, and if you're a man, you're not and never will be, is unbelievably toxic, and possibly the reason why the feminist movement has stalled pretty much completely. I was reading an article today, a paper about choice feminism, in which if you're a woman, everything you do is a feminist action, which is pretty much the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So the answer is no. And what we need is more male feminists and fewer unhelpful non-female feminists.
And can I ask you, Tiffany, sorry, just, we're talking about choices, we're talking about the pressure that young girls feel to live up to these Disney princesses and very unrealistic images.
Rubbish, they don't have to live up to them at all. No.
But one second. Tiffany, if as editor of the Sunday Times style section, and you put in these incredibly beautiful young models who are very thin and they look stunning. So what is that doing to the self-esteem and to the awareness of young girls looking at that?
Okay, we're now moving on to a different area, which I think is very toxic and an area of great debate, which is about girls in those puberty and beyond teenage years. And little girls are not reading style. 3 to 7-year-olds are not reading them. I can promise you that. But I think there are teenagers who are reading fashion magazines. 11, 12, exactly. And they are looking around them. They are much more aware of the wider society and of the images that are reflected back to them. And there you have a very toxic situation, because you have unrealistic, doctored images of what is beautiful being presented to girls who are particularly vulnerable and insecure about the way they look. And there has to be a lot more work done for those girls to realize that those images are not representative of the way real people are, and that there is a gulf between fantasy and reality. But, so bringing it back to Disney and princesses, is that do young girls at the ages of 3 to 7, when they're looking at those Disney princesses, do they understand that that is a fantasy and that is a story and it's not about real life? Does it really matter? I mean, I think the whole thing about, one of the greatest things about life, isn't it, is that you can dream and you can have fantasies. And as you go through life and you learn more things in life, your dreams and your fantasies change. And what you want in life is actually determined by the choices that you see around you. Exactly, Katie. So if you've got lots of examples of women and men doing different things, both in your closer, tight-knit community and in the broader society as a whole, and you've been brought up from a young age as a girl to have the power of choice over your own identity, then hopefully you will continue that into your later life.
Now, talking about that, the dreams, and that it's not wrong for these young girls to have these dreams when they see the Disney franchises. So I want to come back to you because of the Richard Dawkins article this morning. Just explain to us, he was saying fairy tales are dangerous.
What Richard Dawkins was saying was he got criticism this morning for supposedly being against fairy tales. He then later clarified that what he was against was the idea that a frog could turn into a prince, because that's very unlikely, apparently. If you kiss a frog, it's very unlikely that they turn into a prince, and that was not good for children to think that that could happen. But maybe what I think, the point that was missed perhaps from, if we're now talking about feminism, and by the way, I think that there are strides that feminism is making, by the way, is whether, are we missing the point about the narrative of the fairy tale that about princes and princesses and that a frog will turn into a prince that then will whisk you away into this kingdom.
It's the happy ever after.
Exactly. Hannah, am I missing something? That was it. Okay, sorry. And then,
Sarah, that was beautifully done. Thank you so much. Yes, Alannah, absolutely.
I think, you know, as a mother, for me, I've struggled to find enough good things to get my girls to read. So, you know, Pippi Longstocking, one of them. Swallows and Amazons, the girls get to go in the boats, although they do slightly more cooking. I found a book recently called The Girl Who Never Made Mistakes, which was about a girl. And I think this is a really big part about princesses, is, you know, girls are brought up never to make mistakes, never to do anything wrong.
Have to be
Whereas
perfect.
boys are brought up to take risks, to learn from their mistakes. You know, these kinds of things are subtle, and that's where the fantasy, okay, yes, everybody knows that Frog's not going to turn into a prince, and most little children know that too. But there's something insidious about the storytelling and the lack of the alternative story. And I think that's what bothers me. So, you know, the best girl that I found recently, and she's not that great, is the girl in The Secret Garden, because she basically spends most of her time trying to get this hypochondriac boy out of bed and to enjoy the sunshine. And, you know, some of us may have experienced that kind of thing. But anyway, but I think there aren't, you know, I'd love to hear from the audience if they know of any literature for young children or films for young children that they think really allows them to break these stereotypes in the way that Katie has in her own life.
I get mine to watch the news because there's a whole bunch of men on there cocking up every day. Best thing. Clegg, Cameron, you name them, Obama. Yeah, sure, have 5 of yours for one of ours. Go for your life. They watch the news.
Let's hear from the audience. I know, yes, you have a question here. If you could stand up, that would be great.
It sort of comes, I think, out of the conversation that you brought up, Alannah, which is that it's not necessarily the colour, and it's the connotations and the language surrounding it. And there has been data collected on the language that's used on, say, girls' toys in comparison to boys' toys. And what the adjectives surrounding that encourage women and boys and the way they experience the world. But I just want to bring up one thing that you said, Katie, about mothers staying at home doing the school run. If what we're saying is language is powerful and dangerous, that kind of language seeps into a general culture, and it makes it very difficult for women who are in work, who want to make choices about whether they stay at home and look after their children or work part-time. That kind of language has an impact on the way that those women will experience those conversations at work. And we have to be very, very careful about denigrating women who choose to look after children, because what we're saying is that being a mother and bringing up children has no socioeconomic status, which it absolutely does. But we have to be very, very careful with that language. It makes it very, very difficult for women to make informed choices.
Do you agree with that, Katie?
I totally take your point on that. I suppose where we part company is that I spend most of my time working in the States, where women had 6 weeks unpaid maternity leave. That's my understanding of maternity, and I am very at one with that. I admire the American system of employment legislation. They hire and fire at will. Fantastic. And as an employer, I've had to pay for, and I appreciate this is offensive to many, I've had to pay for 2 lots of maternity leave. And I totally respect that for large corporations, I'm gesturing in your direction, that it is possible and feasible, but for small businesses, and they make up the majority of this country, with under 5 employees, to pay current maternity pay is completely destructive for small businesses. So I suppose that's where my harshness comes in, but I respect it. It may not be helpful to the wider debate.
Can I just say something about this? I think that if there was a culture, both in the average man and also in the business culture in this country, that men were prepared to take an equal role in the bringing up of their children, women like you and Katie would not sit there shouting at each other about who's a good mother and who isn't. Frankly, where are the men? And also, I would like to dispute, somebody did say a moment ago that feminism, they think hasn't stalled, and I haven't heard your evidence. But I mean, I feel quite passionate about this, and I would like to say that the fact that we're having this debate on this particular subject is another example of the way that politics has been stripped away from feminism. We can talk about pink till we're blue in the face, but the fact is that 80% of the cuts that the coalition government have brought in have affected women directly, because women are the nation's carers and they work in public service. And no number of blogs has changed that, as far as I can see. Women who are feminists need to get back into politics. We need a political voice. Politics changes things.
What will change it, Tanya, for you? What will change it?
Well, we need to get more women into Parliament, for a start. We need to make more women want to be in Parliament, which is why I find it so very sad about, us just shouting at each other about childcare, and I feel it too. I have a husband who is a stand-up comedian, and I have a full-time job as a journalist, and I don't want to leave my baby. I can't, and I fantasize about leaving my job all the time. I don't really know where this is going. I didn't start out like that, but
That's all right.
We've got to get political. We've got to get the second wave back. Yeah.
Now, we like the political, Tanya. Beautifully said. Just going back to the basic colours here, the pink-blue division. Do we think it's as much of an issue for boys as it is for girls? And I'd like a member of the audience to reply to that. Do we think it's as much as an issue for boys as it is for girls? Yes, the lady at the back, thank you.
Well, I don't know if I'm exactly answering that question, but it is about color and gender. And that is what we haven't really spoken about is this is a whole big marketing ploy as well as everything else. If we even look back 10 years ago, and I'm not a mother, but I'm 40, so I've been around. And, if any of you are my age, we didn't have all this pressure about colors. But any time that you can segment a market and then make money off of them, you're going to do it. And so I almost feel like this whole pink-blue thing is like eating fast food. It's like you don't even have to think. It's shoved down your face and, oh, it's good. I have a pink pretty skirt, Mom. Look at me. Great, honey. I mean, yeah, anyway, so I think this is an important part of this debate is just people are making money off of us.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. I think actually the time that the whole pink-blue thing becomes really acute is actually if you ever watch children's TV on ITV or on a satellite channel and you watch the adverts, and the adverts are so distressing because you can guide and parent your child, and your school is probably very good at this as well, and trying to give your child as much choices and allowing them to follow their identity. But if you watch those adverts, the way they market their product towards children is frightening. So particularly towards girls, you've got girls with sequined pink flashing trainers running around with kind of bunches and hair ribbons and squealing and all of that kind of thing. And then you get an advert that's coming on for a boy, and it's about sort of building something cool, or and it's a boy that's doing it, or making some kind of great Meccano. And there is such a massive difference between the way girls are portrayed in those adverts and the way boys are portrayed in those adverts. And it's a similar issue, I think, with the whole food thing and obesity, is that actually one of the reasons why that's got really out of hand is because marketeers have been allowed to get hold of it and process all these blanket advertising towards us and commandeer the social voice, if you like.
Tiffany, do you think then that girls are stopping becoming scientists, and when they go in at a young age and they look at toys for boys and they don't want to put things...
No, I don't think they are. I'm sorry to be so ambivalent on this, and it's because I think that there has been work that has been done on whether you use words as girl and boy to ascribe to toys. So I think there was an issue recently, wasn't there, with a toy manufacturer that was selling, I think it was a building set, and he said it was for boys, and there was a kind of, a makeup set, and they said it was for girls, and they had to take the boys and girls labeling off it. I think if you're a good parent or a good auntie or whatever, or a good godmother or godfather, you will make sure that you will buy toys for the child in your life that are irrespective of them being a girl or a boy. So you will encourage them to play with all sorts of different things. So what was the question?
Did you feel it was stopping young girls becoming...
So my daughter, who's like a kind of, itsy bitsy, love my horror... By the way, this is the worst thing about Disney princesses, is the nylon content of those dresses. It is so dangerous. Never put them anywhere near a naked friend. But she wants to be a scientist when she grows up, because I've been banging into her for the last 3 years that it's the coolest thing a girl can be. And can she not be a scientist in a pink dress? Can she not?
So it is down, you're saying, absolutely to the parent. It's their responsibility.
I think it
doesn't matter what's around. Doesn't matter how much pink there is. you feel it's absolutely down.
Yeah, and I think you have to limit their exposure to marketing as well. So you have to limit how much TV and that advertising they watch, and you have to be careful what apps they're playing on the iPad and that kind of thing, because it is all there. But this is a free society, freedom of choice, and parents have to take their responsibility. And it's not up to government to ascribe how that should be. It's about individual choice.
From the consumer point of view, Alannah, in terms of practicalities, when you have consumers coming in, let's say to Selfridges, do you find that you have to separate everything for the boys and the girls?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I was wandering around upstairs today because I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I am honestly thinking very hard about it. Is why do I have all of the or Anne Pitcher, why do you, she's the CEO, have all of the train tracks down one end?
Yes.
And all of the Barbies and fluffy toys down the other end? And, I can't really think of a good reason for that, except...
That's efficient.
Right. That's the question, Katie.
Right
Is it practical?
And Katie,
where's lovely Anne?
Oh, she's gone.
Oh, she's gone. Oh, she escaped before she had to answer the question.
That's just efficiency for a parent.
And practical, so nothing to do... Yes.
I know where I am, and for my parents, when they're buying Christmas presents, they know where to go. It's practical, it's sensible, it's perfectly fine.
But then going back to what they were doing in Sweden, and where's lovely Sarah, that wouldn't be... that wouldn't be... She's trying to run away from us. That wouldn't be right then, would it?
So first to clarify, not every single school in Sweden is gender neutral. Just wanted to clarify that. No, I mean, there is a sport right now. I know, I'm sorry we're using Sweden so much as an example, but being an ambassador for that country for a moment, it's a sport to be ultra politically correct when it comes to those things. So no, that would be absolutely frowned upon in a Swedish toy store.
So are we being...
Actually, just very briefly, in the Swedish toy catalogs, they are now having little boys playing. There is actually a boy playing with a pink vacuum cleaner. There is a girl with a drill and a hammer, and they really make a point to make sure that toys are not marketed as boy toys or girls' toys.
So are we being too politically correct? And when you were talking about that image, the image that came to my mind, I don't know if any of you saw this, but the Eurovision Song Contest, when that wonderful man from Austria won, Conchita, with the beard, what is that doing? What are the youngsters thinking? Now, Jana, you have a question here.
One can look at the imposition of quotas in boardrooms and say that this is something that must be imposed top down, or one can take the approach, which I think is taken here, which is that good choices are good business. And I think that's really impressive and something to be saluted. I also think that Disney princesses like Mulan, like Elsa, will probably be that princess of the future, where they've realized there's a huge success, a huge uptake among even the women in this room, suggesting that modern day princess is a step in the right direction, and maybe in 5 years they'll actually not just be castigated, but leading the way.
So is it wrong for a young girl to want to be like Sleeping Beauty? Is it wrong for her to want to marry Prince Charming, not go out into the workplace herself, but actually be at home and have her prince provide? Yes.
I
love going to Tanya.
Can I just drag you back to reality? No one should want to be Sleeping Beauty. She is in a coma. Okay, and this is bad. And
but she was kissed by a very handsome prince.
Yes, because the spell which was put on her by an evil witch has been taken away. I don't know. I need to work. I can only speak for myself. I need to work. And whether women who enjoy their jobs less than I do probably also need to work, unless we want to live the way we largely lived in the past, which is that women were financially dependent on men. And I always say this, which is great if you have a good relationship, and if you don't, it's really, really not.
So how independent...
I think they had quite a good relationship after she came out of her coma.
Yes, she did. They did like each other. Well, we have Angelina Jolie coming back now to actually prove it all wrong. So for the women in the audience, I'd like to ask, what do you think? Are there any of you that feel that actually young girls should be allowed to have that dream? Yes.
So my name is Marina. I am not from Sweden. I'm from Serbia.
Okay.
Which is a very different country.
Yes.
I wanted to make a point about a couple of things that I've heard. One is, I think, whether a woman or a man should have a choice. But what I think I've heard from several people here is that choice is limited. Choice when it comes to fairy tales, choice when it comes to toys that are out there. And several people have said that the society has this kind of way of influencing young children, but then the parents really should do X, Y, Z. Yeah. But there's a limit. I'm not a parent, but I know many parents. There's a limit to which, the limit in time and energy to which parents can all of the time provide all sorts of wonderful choices while at the same time working and not worrying whether the spouse or whatever will be there or not be there or whatever. So the society and the parents have to somehow do it together. And the choices are limited. And I'll give you one little anecdote. My father used to be on school runs. My mother worked. My father did too, but he was in academia. And my dad thought it was really funny to read funny stories to us because he's a mathematician and he thought it would be nice to observe how the two daughters react to the stories. And he dug up a story somewhere that went along the lines of, there was a princess and she sailed the 7 oceans and climbed the 7 mountains and did all she was supposed to do. And then she was, as an award, turned into a boy. But this was the point at which Dad was demoted and there were no more stories from him.
What a reward that would be. So, would you want to tell that anecdote, Katie, to yours?
I kind of would. I really like the way you told that story, and I also like your aggressive initial stance. I am not from Sweden.
But there's nothing wrong from
I know, I'm just playing the game. But, no, what I like is exactly those kind of stories, but then going, so what do you reckon? So, like, I'll take the girls into Hollister, you know, the store. I mean, for me, like, you can't see anything because it's pitch black. You can't see what you're buying. You just buy something. You don't know what the hell you've bought. But that's because I'm 39, even though I look 52. But anywho, what I'll say to them is, so we'll go in there, we'll get something, we'll come out, and I'll say, do you know what happened in there last week? They sacked someone because they weren't good looking enough. And that happened. So what do you reckon? And we'll have a chat about it. And maybe one of mine, Poppy, might go, well, yeah, that's okay. They need pretty people. Pretty people sell clothes better. And the sensible daughter of mine, who dresses like a boy and is pretty rock and roll, says, that's crap. That shouldn't happen. And those are the conversations, I think, with those stories or real life stories like the news, which is why I really like the news. You can say, well, what do you reckon? And I think that makes kids tougher.
Can I tell you the biggest mistake that I make as a parent, and I see it around me all of the time, is that I tell my daughter constantly, she looks good. And I never say the same to my son. I say that he's done something cool. And I think that there is a terrible instinctive reaction, which is different for girls and boys amongst everyone in society, to reward girls for their looks and to reward boys for their actions. And if I could change one thing about the way I parent, it would be that, and I can't.
And I mean, I think what comes out of this conversation, I think it's why it's worth having it, especially in a department store, is, you know, is the awareness, is, you know, if you know, I'm sure everyone who came to this talk tonight had a certain level of awareness, but if that gets out, I think those are the little tiny things that you can do. And I mean, I've been trying a girlfriend and I noticed that we both did the same thing, where as soon as we brushed our daughter's hair, we'd say, no, go and show your daddy how pretty you look. And she pointed this out to me, and I realized I was doing it too. And it's just like you say, and it somehow gets into you, and we don't really know why or how, but it does. And I think one of the things I've been doing with my girls lately, since I've been preparing for this talk, I've been interviewing them about, so, you know, what kind of jobs would you like to have? So the 4-year-old would like to be a princess. And I said to her, and how would you go about getting that kind of job? And she's quite clear that LinkedIn, and then probably, you know, but what she'll do is marry a prince. And then I said to her, well, what'll you do when you are a princess? And she's clear about that too. I will wear pretty dresses. And I say, well, you know, how will you pay for those pretty dresses? You know, and she'll say, well, I don't have to worry because I live in a castle. So, you know, but but you know, so this goes on, and I don't really know how to change it. But the eldest I must have done something right with, because she's 6, and she says, I said, well, what are you going to be when you grow up? She says, oh, I'm going to be an architect in the mornings and an astronaut in the afternoons.
She'll be very busy.
And, you know, so you don't, you know, you hope that the 4-year-old, by the time she's 6 or 8, is going to start to say something a little more interesting, but you still have to watch yourself. I actually think the reason she wants to be an architect is because her dad's an architect and he wears pink. And maybe that's why. But no, but I think, you know, we all have to make a little bit of an effort, and we also have to make demands from the people who sell us stuff.
But Alannah, what's interesting is, you know, your daughter's saying she wants to be a princess. So we do have a role model of a young lady called Kate Middleton, who grew up to marry a prince. And as far as I'm aware, didn't hold...
I'm sorry, in what way is she a role model?
Tanya, to a lot of people, I mean, she is always on the cover of every single newspaper.
That would make her a role model for publishers?
5, of course, but the demand is there. And of course, if everyone's looking and she's being put in the papers as that role model, isn't she wonderful? Hasn't she done a great job?
That's not why the papers
then
are
of
using her.
course... But that's what we're saying. Young girls will look at that and think, well, oh, she can do it, and everyone's applauding her for her outfits. What do they talk about when Kate Middleton goes on the tours? It's the outfits. So really, how is that going to change unless it can change from the media as well?
Revolution, Tanya? Is it Republicanism?
Well, you guys, I don't think that anywhere in the remit of this debate did we have republicanism. I'm sorry, what's the question? Give me a simple question, I can answer it.
No, we were discussing, it was a discussion point of Alannah's girl saying that she would like to be a princess. So the point being of the role models, and actually a big role model that everyone seems to agree is a good role model, and please tell me if you disagree, is Kate Middleton, who did marry a prince and has been put up there as a role model.
Well, I think at that point you probably need to tell your daughter about the story of Princess Diana, and then maybe she wouldn't want to be a princess.
Which brings us back to the point of the responsibility of the parent. And the debate, of course, is the role of the parent. And to our next point, which I'd like to bring up, gender differences, are they innate or acquired? And this will have to be, unfortunately, because we could go on all night, our final point. Innate or acquired? Would anyone
Can I just cut in very quickly?
Yes.
I think we mentioned it, but Kate Middleton is put on magazine covers because of what she wears. Where do we talk about what she does? Because
that was the point, exactly. That was the point we were making.
Okay, she gets dressed and undressed many times every day. Otherwise, she is a professional wife. She was very expensively educated. And I believe the only serious job she's ever had was an accessories buyer. And there's nothing wrong with that, but she didn't even stick at that.
She's the real-life princess. I mean, we're just making the point that she happens to be a real-life princess.
And I know the responsibility is with parents to highlight that, but also with the media. She was on the front page because her skirt blew up and we saw her bum.
Yes.
She wasn't on the front page because she's actually trying to make a difference and create links with the Commonwealth countries and improve political aspirations and social connections and actually globalisation for our country, other countries.
So whose fault is that?
I think it's the fault of Style magazine.
I think it's the fault of a drugged populace in Hockter jewellery.
Now we have...
I agree with you. I think that's a really good point. I think actually, and I disagree with Tanya, I think that she does have a job, and I think she does do stuff. She might not work as hard as the rest of us, and she might have a bigger wardrobe than the rest of us, but I do think she does have a point, and she does do things other than get dressed. Also, let's not forget she's now a mother as well, and that, as we know, is a full-time job.
Now, ladies, now before you get into a big argument, we're going to have one final statement from each and every one of you, and then unfortunately we're going to have to close the session. So, Alannah, can I please start with you? Your final thoughts.
Gosh, I suppose my final thoughts are, how do we take this forward? You know, how can this session here, this group of people, or they're all going to be tweeting hopefully, or they're going to be talking to their friends, how do we each as individuals take this forward? And how do we, whether that's through our own families or whether that's through our jobs as journalists or business people or mothers, you know, that's kind of what this is leaving me with, is an opportunity. And I think that's what I'd like to think about and know next.
And Tiffany?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that we are having this debate, that we're asking these questions, that there was a lobby group that was set up a couple of years ago called Pink Stinks, has concentrated everybody's mind onto the issue at hand, which is that we are probably blizzarding our children in gender-specific colours, and that I would say, again, that it's our responsibility as parents and as carers and aunties and godparents to make sure that our children are aware of the choices. And I know that as a parent, when my daughter does a twirl in her Disney princess dress, I have to not say that she looks great, but I have to ask her how she's going to go horse riding in it or climb a tree in it. And that would be a better way to parent her.
And Tanya?
Oh, I think I've said almost everything I have to say. So I'll just finish on an anecdote, which is you may or may not be aware that in Thomas the Tank Engine, on Thomas the Tank Engine Island, occasionally they used to have female engines, and they were either so rubbish that they broke, or more often they would put the lives of everybody in danger. So I'd like to see less of that.
And Katie, last but not least.
I'm going to back up Tanya all the way. Hurricanes are called by male and female names. When they're called by female names, they kill 5 times more people than when they're called male names. In my Sun column tomorrow, I'm talking about the fact the last one, called Dolly, killed 5 times more people because people hung around in their homes and waited for Dolly to come round and play. I also had to make a slight advanced judgment on this evening in order to promote the event, and I suggested that all the people sat on pink stools were people that I found very fun and would want to go for a drink with. All the people on grey stools I said were really boring and sent me into a coma. I'd like to apologise for that in advance.
Ladies and gentlemen, could you please join me in thanking our fabulous speakers, Alannah Weston, Tiffany Dark, Tanya Gold, Katie Hopkins, and I would like to thank all of you, because without all of you coming, we couldn't have these debates, which are so important. I'd also like to thank Intelligence Squared for allowing us the platform, and of course to Selfridges for having us here in your pink and black room. Thank you to everyone. Have a great night, everyone.